Hello everyone, welcome to this session. I'm Bahar and I'm going to start this session by introducing Tyler Menezes, the Executive Director at CodeDay, a nonprofit organization. CodeDay is providing diverse opportunities to all students that would like to explore a future in technology with a focus on underserved students. Tyler has a technical background from his time running a venture-backed tech startup, and today he will be talking more about CodeDay and the big data challenge his team developed to get more students interested in big data field. Please post your question in the lower right-hand side of the chat room in the Q section. And Tyler, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction, Bahar. I'm really excited to be here with you all today to talk a little bit more about two sort of related programs, Virtual CodeDay and the Big Data Challenge, and really our efforts to bring students together to raise awareness for computer science as a whole and for big data in specific. So there's a few things that I'm going to talk to you about today. First of all, I wanted to start off with why most computer science education isn't really producing the results that we're hoping for. I'm going to talk to you about what CodeDay and the Big Data Challenge are. I'll even show you some cool video clips. We'll take a deep dive into some of the design decisions that we made for these programs, how we came to them, and also how those things sort of changed a little bit as we went online. We'll review the actual data and the results, because I'm sure many of you here today are interested in data. And then I'll also very briefly talk about some ways that you can get involved if this is something that you're passionate about as well. I hope that some of the things I share to you today, even if it's not something that you're interested in getting involved with, will be something that you can take back to your own organizations in your own education work. Okay, so to start us off with, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the problems with computer science education, the way we think of it right now. So when you hear the phrase computer science education or CS education, what are some of the things that you think of? If you're like most people, the things that you're thinking of are probably schools, classes, workshops, documentation, tutorials, books, conferences like this one. I think a lot of the time when we think of computer science education, we think in terms of the end result, the end, the end product, and the documentation that's really helping people, implement things. But the way that I like to look at CS education is actually to take a step earlier and start there. Because when most students hear something like coding or big data or really any number of different things, they think, oh, I can't do that. And who specifically do I mean when I say most students? Like, who's saying I can't do that? Well, according to a recent study from the Kapoor Center, about 96% of students in California thought that they were not capable of becoming computer scientists, that it wasn't something that people like them could do. And in fact, I myself had this personal background. My own feelings were very similar. So this is a photo of me when I was very young. And when I was very young, I was actually living in Spokane, Washington, which is about 4 or 5 hours east of Seattle. And I was super, super miserable. I had no friends, I had no interests, I had no hobbies. I really didn't have anything that I was interested in or anything that I felt like I could do there. I was just super, super miserable. And we had computers around the house, actually. My dad worked in networking, but I was never interested in it. And he didn't really, push me to, try to force me to do it. He encouraged me, but it was just something that I thought that I would never do. It wasn't something that people like me did. And then one day I just sort of happened across a book that had a picture of a slot machine on it. And I was like 11 at this time, 11 or 12, somewhere around there, I think. And so I didn't actually know what a slot machine was, but it looked really cool. And the book was about how you could make this slot machine in Visual Basic. I was like, wow, I can make something that looks that cool in Visual Basic. And that's what really got me interested in reading the book. And I did. I convinced my parents to let me check out the book. I struggled really hard. I think they helped me quite a bit. And I ended up making this slot machine that I didn't really understand what the purpose of it was, but it certainly looked really cool. And that's really what set me along my coding journey. And in fact, this is true for many folks as well. I mean, I showed you that statistic about a lot of the students in California. Well, most of the time when I go out to classrooms, at the high school level especially, and I talk to students and I say, tell me what you think of as coding. Most students describe something sort of like this picture. It's a guy sitting in a dark room, typing ones and zeros on a screen. He's got like a hoodie, it's like very dimly lit, but like with cool, sort of blue backgrounds. He's typing ones and zeros and green text on a computer screen. Maybe he's got a pile of soda cans and like some Dorito, dust on his fingers. Like this is what a lot of students will genuinely describe to me when I ask them what they think of when we say computer science. And at the same time, a lot of students think of themselves in a particular way as well. This is an actual photo of one of the students from one of our events. And clearly she considers herself to be some sort of musician. And so a lot of students at this starts to develop around the middle school level and then really sort of kicks into high gear as they get into high school and college. A lot of students really have this sense of identity. They feel like they know who they are. And if you're an artist, and this is what you think of as an artist, and you are you're interested in, you're being asked if you're interested in computer science, and you think of computer science as that guy in the dark room typing ones and zeros on a screen, those two just aren't compatible. So what does this lead to? Well, again, there's lots of classes. There are a lot of nonprofits that have done an excellent job of making sure that computer science education is available to everyone. We partner with many of them, Code.org, Microsoft Teals. There's organizations like Hack Club or Girls Who Code that make sure that there are clubs out there, but most students still aren't interested. And so because of that, the representation as technology is not great. We've probably all seen statistics like this. About 16% of people in technical careers in computer science are women. About 14% are Black, Latinx, Native American, other people of color. That the representation is just not really great. And a lot of products that are being made are not being made for the vast majority of people. And a lot of things are being left off the table. A lot of really great ideas are going unheard. This might be something else that's very familiar to you as well. About 700,000 open tech positions in late 2019. There, as a whole, is a talent shortage, especially among really talented, qualified individuals for a lot of positions. And I think for many fields, this is even more extreme because when you think of what the students who are graduating college are going into, many of them want to go work for the big FANG companies: Google, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, Netflix, et cetera, et cetera. And they really generally are going into back-end development or like front-end web development. But a lot of the more complicated problems, students just aren't going into. So the talent pipeline is also a problem, in terms of what we're getting from not very many students are going into computer science, and there's not a lot of diversity in the students who are. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you now about our solution to this problem. How do we get more people to take the classes? How do we get more people to attend the clubs, et cetera, et cetera? And there are two things that we have developed, and again, they sort of go hand in hand. CodeDay is our program for attracting students who think that they are not interested in computer science or programming, and getting them to take an interest and getting them in the front door, basically. We're not teaching them super advanced things at this point. We just want to make sure that they realize this is something they can do. The Big Data Challenge is a part of CodeDay that's also now being run separately a little bit as well. And the focus of that is to do something very similar, but for big data specifically. So once students know that they're interested, how can we get them to explore really lucrative, important fields inside of computer science so that they don't just try to go down the path of becoming a front-end web developer? Because there are plenty of people who are front-end web developers, and not that we don't need them, but there are many other people that we need in the industry as well. So that's the Big Data Challenge. And I'm going to talk to you now about what those two look like. So CodeDay, same thing. So again, getting students interested in coding and then getting them interested in big data analytics once they're interested in coding. So CodeDay is our solution for getting students who are not interested in programming at all to become interested. Now, CodeDay started out as an in-person event back in 2011. We would bring students to physical locations, oftentimes local technology companies or co-working spaces, sometimes colleges. In the greater Atlanta metropolitan area, actually, LexisNexis Risk Solutions has hosted a CodeDay many times. They've been a great partner, but all over the world, we have companies like this. And hopefully one day we will have in-person events again, but I'm sure, as you can all imagine, with COVID-19, that's not currently happening. But back when we were doing in-person events, we had over 480 events in, I think, 55 cities around the world, mostly in North America, but we did also have Kenya and a few others. 54,400 alumni have gone through our programs. And again, most of those either said that they had no interest in coding whatsoever and they'd never taken a class, or they took a class but decided it wasn't for them. So about 37,000 students who've come to these physical in-person events didn't think that coding was for them. We somehow managed to convince them to drive out to one of these events. We bought them pizza. Like, they were very committed for people who didn't think that they were interested. And we'll talk about how that worked. Despite that, 70% of those people who were not interested ahead of time continued to code when we asked them 3 months afterward. They said that they were working on a project outside of schoolwork. So about 25 or 26,000 new students decided to pursue code, at least somewhat seriously, as a result of attending a CodeDay. So what does a CodeDay look like? Well, it starts off with pitches. Unlike a lot of classes or workshops, the way that CodeDay works, students come in and pitch ideas for things that they want to make. They don't need to know how to make it ahead of time. They just need to have an idea, an inspiration, something that really resonates with them. From those pitches, they decide on the coolest ones. Like, everyone comes up in front of the room. Once we've gotten through all that, people just sort of walk around, talk to each other, find the people that they liked the ideas of the most, and then they start brainstorming and working and figuring out how to do it. We do a 1-hour introductory workshop at the beginning of it using a programming language called Construct, because most people are making games, and it's a game-based programming language. But once we've done that, that is pretty much all the formal instruction that they're going to get. And then they spend the rest of the event working with our mentors and the rest of their team to build the game in their own self-directed way. At the end of the event, we have presentations where students show off what they made. There are some small prizes, but nothing super, super big, because we don't want this to be competitive. It's about fun. It's about creativity. And that in itself is what attracts a lot of the students who are artists and creatives. So I'm going to really quickly show you a video of what this looks like. So let me go ahead and paste the link in here. So those are just a few of the clips that I think you could see of what it was like to be a student at these events. Some of the projects that these students would come up with. And again, remember, most of these students had never programmed before in their life. So the idea of getting students interested on the basis of these things, you could see some of the projects were very polished and they were having a great time. That is the big data challenge, or that is CodeDay as a whole. I wanted to talk to you now about what the big data challenge is. So back in, I think, 2019, Monica Garrett, who is I think the lead of community relations at LexisNexis Risk Solutions, came to me. They've been a partner of ours with CodeDay for a long time and said, hey, like, big data is this really important field students should be getting interested in. Do you think that there's something we could put together to try to get the CodeDay students more interested specifically in big data? And so that's what we really set out to do with this idea of the big data challenge. So we started out with the idea of making the big data challenge part of a CodeDay. So again, these are 24-hour in-person weekend-long events. And we wanted to make just a 1-hour segment of that to sort of whet the student interest, right? To get them excited, to make them want to learn a little bit more about this. So that's kind of where it started out, and that's what a lot of our things are based on. Now, I will say from that, the interest has been very high from schools who've heard about this from their students who want to do it outside of CodeDays. So even as we've moved CodeDay online and we are starting to offer the big data challenge again to students online at these CodeDays, at the same time, we've run these for schools outside of these CodeDays as well. So I think actually next week, we're running a big data challenge for a school in Florida and a school in Georgia. And we've been getting interest from other schools as well, because they want to make sure that their students are getting interested and excited about big data as well. So what does the big data challenge look like? Well, it is, and like I said, about an hour long. We do a quick presentation that sort of covers some of the basics. So that's like, what is big data? Why is it important? We cover the really, really basics of ECL. And when I say really, really basics, I mean, we cover ECL in 15 minutes. And we'll talk about why we do it so quickly, but the goal is not for them to understand every little, minutia of how to write ECL or even really what's going on too much under the hood. We're trying to get them excited. And then after that, we have them go. We have them get started on some problems that are really real world problems that they can try to solve as quickly as possible in small groups. And there's a competition aspect, just like with CodeDay itself. The winners get a prize of their choosing. Or of the local event staff's choosing, depending on how we have it structured. Okay, so with that in mind, I wanted to talk about some of the things that make this work. And especially as we were moving things online, understanding how we can apply what we've learned from these in-person education events to really take some of this online. So I'm going to talk about our method for building interest now. We'll dive a little bit deeper into what makes both of these events tick and the format of them. You'll learn a little bit more about that as well. But also, hopefully, as you're putting together education initiatives in your own organizations or with your own products, as you're trying to make sure that more and more people are understanding what it is that we do as an industry, hopefully some of this can be applicable to that as well. Okay, so we've really learned, I believe I have 4 things in here that are, the things that we've really learned over time as we've put together these events. And one of these is around this concept of student identities that I touched on at the beginning of my talk. So that's that idea that a lot of students think of themselves in a particular way, and they think of programming in a particular way. And by the way, you probably do this too. I do this all the time myself, right? I actually don't think of myself as an artist. And my fiance, who thinks of herself partially as an artist and partially as a scientist, is always kind of pointing out, oh no, maybe you could be doing a little bit more than you think. So we all do this, but this is particularly prevalent in students, especially at the middle school and high school level, where these sort of like identities in your peer group are really, really, really important. And when we're trying to reach these students who are going to soon be deciding what they want their major to be, very, very important that we understand this concept of identities. So if you think of yourself as an artist and you think of computer science as boring, typing ones and zeros on a screen, how are we going to change that perception? what we do at CodeDay is we always try to, when we're putting together a program, look for things that are related to the interest that we want to get them interested in, whether that be computer science, big data, cybersecurity, a lot of other things we've done this for. Things that are related to that interest, but are not directly, require skills outside of that traditional interest. And so for CodeDay, what that looks like is video games. When you look at video games, I think much to people's surprise, women play more video games than men. I don't necessarily mean that they play more like Call of Duty or whatever. I think that is probably still mostly male dominated. I don't have the facts on that, but I suspect so. But when you look at gaming as a whole, women play more video games than men. And across different ethnicities or across different income levels, backgrounds, all sorts of things, it's pretty consistent. Like everyone seems to generally like video games. And the nice thing about video games is, in addition to reaching those students who are not traditionally interested in coding and wouldn't say that they want to go code something, there's a lot of different talents involved. So again, we're not necessarily trying to get these students here because they want to code. In fact, if you look at the website for these events, the only place it even says the word code is in the name, which I'm not even sure if I would have chosen that name again if we were to do it again, because we're really trying to encourage them to do other things. So you look at a game, this is a screenshot of a game made in, I believe, 2007 by a really amazing person named Jonathan Blow. This game not only has the programming aspect, but there's also art, music. There's a really interesting story that someone has written. There are cool game mechanics that have been designed into this. And so you can imagine how, if you're an artist who doesn't want to learn how to code, but you see something like this, you think, I could contribute by making art for this. And being able to envision yourself doing that is what really makes this entire thing possible for us, because then all of a sudden now they're interested, they're excited, they think that this is something that they can do. We get them to the event, and of course, we tell them, oh, we're just making video games, we're not coding. You're going to go to this video game making workshop. And of course it's coding, but they think of coding as boring. This is helping them make a video game. By the end of it, they get pretty excited. And they get to use their artistic talents, but they're also learning about that coding as well. Now, you might wonder, what sort of projects could students make at something like this? So I'm going to show you just the beginning of another quick video, just to kind of show you some examples of the games that people can make from this. I'm not going to show you the whole thing. This will only be about a minute. So let me go ahead and paste this in. Cool. So again, I'm not going to show you all of it. If you go and search for this online, you would be able to find many, many more videos. I think we've had probably well over 5,000 or 6,000 projects, if not more. But you can see, like, the projects are actually pretty polished for 24 hours and for not that much experience. And you might have noticed, by the way, all of those were related to a button. We have themes for these events as well, just to make it a little bit more creative. So the theme for this event, and this was an online event, was called "Just Push That Button." And so you can see both the games had a button-based spin. Now, for the big data challenge, similar question, like, what sort of projects can students make? Well, again, this is a 1-hour challenge. The students have often never heard about big data at all, but even if they have, they almost certainly have never used ECL before. We get them going using a cloud IDE with ECL. I'm not sure if that's like fully released yet or not, but we have access to this cloud IDE so they can get started really quickly without downloading lots of things. The questions that they're answering as part of this big data challenge look like this. You can take a look at some of them. They're not necessarily the most complicated questions that you could possibly ask on a big data challenge set, but for 15 minutes of training in ECL, the idea of getting students excited about these things is pretty good. Again, like the idea as well, you might notice all of these are around games. So a lot of the question sets that are being produced, and I believe Bahar actually wrote a lot of these, the person who introduced me at the beginning. The question sets that we're coming up with are actually related to things that the students are interested in. So games, music we've done as well, we've done sports. And so the idea of this entire thing is these students have a little bit of training. They have just enough to know how to get started. They have these questions that are exciting to them. They can actually solve pretty complicated questions, which is very neat. Okay, so the first thing I was talking about was focusing on those identities, ways that students feel like they can contribute, and things that are aligned with their current interests. The second thing that I'm going to talk about that we've learned with how we put together these programs is around motivation. So when you think about it, when you're trying to learn something new, it's actually a pretty terrible experience. So I have a graph here, and this is kind of a hand-wavy graph. We have some ways of measuring this, but all of them are a little bit, they're not super empirical. But anyway, y-axis here we have fun, some measure of fun, and x-axis we have time. And you can see you start out with some base level of interest, and then maybe you go to the interesting, beginner workshop. You have some ideas, you go through the pitches, you're excited about something that you want to make, or you go to the, the big data workshop and you're excited about the idea of solving these problems. And then you start trying to implement it. And I think any of us who've been developers before know a lot of development is debugging. And that is super, super true when you are a beginner. It is a lot of time spent debugging. And so then you make a little bit of progress. You're starting to see things come together. And then you spend another 2 or 3 hours, banging your head against a wall trying to figure out why this code won't work. And again, you make a little tiny bit of progress. You're starting to get a little bit excited, but you can see the general trend of this graph, right? And when you get to a certain point, most of our students get to this point that we found where they just say, I'm going to give up. This isn't for me. It's not something I can do. It's a really, really tough situation to keep motivation up in beginners who aren't intrinsically motivated. And again, this is especially true when you're talking about where students already have a really defined sense of who they are. If they think that they're going to be a front-end web developer and you're trying to get them interested in something like big data, and they're struggling with problems with, with their ECL code isn't compiling properly. They're getting an error message. They don't understand whatever that looks like. Very, very easy for them to say, this isn't something I can do. So how do we address that? Well, with CodeDay, you might have seen a snippet of this in the video. We do this, we do activities all throughout the event. So this is a screenshot of what we call a no-hands programming contest. If you've ever seen FizzBuzz, the goal is to write a program that counts from 1 to 100, prints out each number, and if it's evenly divisible by 3, it prints Fizz. If it is evenly divisible by 5, it prints Buzz. They have to program this without using their fingers or hands. And so usually you'll see people using their noses, but I've seen people using their toes. I've seen people try to hold pencils with their elbows. Super, super fun. We've also done group rock, paper, scissors tournaments. We do a thing called SlideShare Improv, where people are trying to pitch or basically give a presentation that they've never seen before that we found on the internet. Lots and lots of fun activities, so that even though they're not making that much progress with their project and they're starting to get demotivated there, overall their excitement is continuing to to go up and up, which is great. And so this works for us for these longer events. But the other solution that we found is to just do shorter, quick, to the point, sort of, just fun and exciting events that are inside of that are shorter in duration. So with the Big Data Challenge, that's kind of how we have things structured. We have it being a 1-hour event, which again is pretty short. But the other thing is, like, the way students are working, they're working in groups. So they're trying to solve challenges as a group. They get to talk and brainstorm, and there's some time pressure too, right? Because whoever solves these challenges first is going to win the prize. And again, the prize is not necessarily something super exciting. One of the code days that I went to in Atlanta, we gave a cheesecake of their choice was the prize. My favorite was a code day in Minneapolis where they had a Bob Ross waffle maker. It made waffles in the shape of Bob Ross's head. But not super competitive, but it still feels fun and exciting, and they're having a great time. The way that we're doing these is they have a wide set of challenges to choose from. So they can, if they're a beginner, feel like they're able to make more progress by solving more challenges more quickly. We've recently been moving toward this model. I have a screenshot here of this tool that we've created. This is actually for a cybersecurity related one we do. This isn't for the big data challenge because we haven't actually started with that yet. But so a screenshot of the tool, and basically each of the challenge questions has points. And as you solve the challenges, your team gains points. You can see a live scoreboard. Oftentimes at these events, we have cool music playing, and there's someone sort of like a sports announcer almost announcing when teams are taking the lead. It's just really, really fun and exciting, and it keeps the energy up. So even though you're not making as much progress as you would have if you were doing a day-long training, you're still having a lot of fun. You're still feeling like you're having a lot of fun. And when you leave this event, even if you don't win, you feel like, wow, is this what a career in big data is like? This is something that I'm interested in, which is, again, our goal. Okay, so the third thing that I want to talk about is this concept of test culture and the fallacy of having experts in computer science. Now, I think that this is a little bit applicable to everyone to some extent. We tend to overestimate other people's experience levels, but this is particularly relevant if you're working with anyone who has currently or recently been in a school setting. So this is middle school, high school, and college. A lot of people believe that because they've been conditioned to study for a test, take the test, and if you don't know the answers to everything on the test, you fail, right? You don't know what you're doing. A lot of students genuinely believe that when they get their degree, they're qualified, they know everything there is to know about the subject, and before then, anytime they don't know something, that's just more evidence that they need to learn, they need to take more classes, and they're not good enough to contribute to this. And for any of us who've been a programmer, I think that this is like comedic, right? As Bahar mentioned in my introduction, I used to run a technology startup, a YC venture-backed technology startup. And this is what my browser looked like all the time, right? It was tons and tons of Stack Overflow questions and Google searches. Because even though we feel like we know, we know the basics, like I'm no longer stumped by how to commit a file to Git. That's no longer something that troubles me. That just means we move on to harder problems. But for students who are constantly getting stumped by these problems with I can't figure out what's going wrong with my Git commit, they don't really see that. And so when we as the experts who already have solved this problem 1,000 times in our life, when we come in and say, oh, here's how you do it, they start to think of us as this unapproachable person who, I'll never be able to get to their level. I'm just wasting their time. I'm not good enough. I don't have the answers to this test, basically. And that's very counterproductive as well. So how do we counter that? Well, yeah, again, there's a lot of different ways. Here's some things that we've done with CodeDay, that in-person event that's focused on getting people in computer science as a whole. We remove questions from our introductory workshop. This is not something that I've seen a lot of people study, but I think it's very interesting. A lot of people try to figure out, what do we need to teach people to be successful as a programmer? We actually started approaching this from the other direction and said, what can we remove to help people learn that on their own, rather than telling them it all up front, so that they don't feel like they need to remember every single thing from our intro workshop, and they feel like they have the skills to learn these things on their own. So we actually did a bunch of tests with, I think, about 300 students. This is back in 2011 or 2012, or 2014, sorry, where we did our introductory workshop. We basically just A/B tested. Different cities would have different sections of the workshop removed where we teach them programming concepts. The programming language, by the way, if you're curious, is like a JavaScript style event-based programming language that builds web games, and it has mix-ins, or what Unity would call behaviors, some things called traits. Behaviors basically that you can implement in your classes. It's kind of like a multi-inheritance thing. If we removed events, we removed those mix-ins, we removed objects versus instances, the mentors would find that the students were getting a lot more frustrated by those things, and they would report that those things were more important. When we removed things like arrays, or the ability to include one file in another, or even the ability to create variables, like what a fundamental programming concept, variables, it turned out that the students weren't actually that much more frustrated. Doesn't mean that they didn't need them. They did use them in their projects, but they would learn them on their own. And the other thing that we found was questions actually went down. So we taught them less things that they needed to know, but the questions were actually less and less. Mentors had less and less to do because the students were figuring out how to learn these things on their own. They were no longer using us to think for them. And not only that, the outcomes, the number of students that were continuing to program after this went up about 9%, which is fantastic, right? We've taught them less. They've developed more of those skills to continue on their own. And then when they leave these events, they're more likely to continue to program. The big data workshop, again, same general concept. Bahar's team put together these, this really great slides. It's a slightly outdated one, which actually Bahar pointed out, but I didn't have time to change it before the slide deadline. But again, we cover ECL in like 15 minutes. And there's no way that students are going to learn all of ECL in 15 minutes. It's just not possible. They're not going to become fluent in it. But by going through this and telling them explicitly at the beginning of this workshop, hey, you're not going to know every bit of this. I want you to remember that all of these things exist. I want you to remember generally where they are in the slide deck. And at the end of this, we're going to give you that slide deck. And as you're solving these problems and you get to a point where you're like, I need to do this thing, remember that it's on the slides. That is the key bit of thing that's going to allow them to, once they leave this event, continue to go to the trainings and continue to do the research online, basically like find those things out for themselves that they need in order to complete their projects. And that's what we're going for, is the ability to continue to do this in a self-directed way. So again, cutting down the amount of content that we're teaching them is motivating them to pursue this even more. And again, there are plenty of places for much more detailed workshops and things, but when we're talking about people who don't want to learn this to begin with, that's not the time for it. This works much better. Okay, so we talked about those 3 things. We talked about the idea of personas. We talked about the idea of keeping up the motivation levels by keeping things high energy. And then we talked about the idea of basically teaching people less things, helping them to learn for themselves when they're beginners and they don't feel confident that they can do that. What are the results of this? Well, we have typically about 75% of students who have either literally never coded and don't want to, or took an intro class and weren't particularly interested. They said they don't want to pursue this. Now, these statistics are a little bit out of date, so you'll see that the numbers are a little bit wrong. We haven't rerun the numbers. But about 32,000 students last time we did this were from those 2 groups that we really care about, the ones who don't want to code. 20,000 of those students, when we ran these numbers, kept coding for 3 months after attending the event, even though they said they didn't want to learn how to code. And that's excluding projects that are related to their school. So the results of this have actually been very, very successful by our metric. These are students that are then going on to take the computer science classes that are being offered at their schools. They're enrolling at clubs like Hack Club or Girls Who Code. They're going to the free online trainings. I know actually some of our students who've been to the Big Data Workshop are at the HPCC Systems Community Day. And in fact, one of the students who was at a CodeDay, did the Big Data Challenge, interned, and is in the poster competition today. So I'd certainly encourage you to go check that out. We had some students who are working sort of unofficially with the HPCC team on some things related to COVID-19, which I believe is another talk that you may have seen as well, related to some of that work. Some of that was from CodeDay students as well. So the number of students who are interested in this, even in the few months that we've been running this, has been super, super successful. The diversity outcomes overall, 42% of the participants in our programs are women, versus, again, about 18% industry-wide. 36% come from a low-income background. We have a program where we can give those students free laptops. If they come to a CodeDay, they finish the event, they get to keep a laptop, not a super high-end laptop, it's a used Chromebook, but they get to keep it. 50% of these students don't have a laptop at home. So, a lot of these students are coming, getting excited and going home and continuing to work on projects. 34% are Black, Latinx, Native American, other people of color. And in total, about 70% of the students are from one or more groups that is underrepresented in technology today. So the diversity of these students, by focusing on these things that are not purely just teaching them the content, but also focusing on these other aspects, the diversity has been great. The Big Data Challenge, now we've only run this starting in fall. As I'm sure you can, we run these events, by the way, quarterly, these CodeDays. And so as I'm sure you know, after winter 2020, there was a major world-changing event. And so the data is a little bit, not quite what we were hoping to see, but that's mostly for those external factors. But you can see that the growth has increased. Almost 2,000 students have participated. 62% when we surveyed them as a follow-up said that they were interested in exploring careers in big data. A lot of them are looking for internships now too. This is both at the high school and college level. So if you're interested, this is a pool of students that's now excited. We're now, like I said, we took a lot of those learnings that we did for our in-person events, those three sort of key points that I talked about. We applied those to making an online virtual CodeDay. So we did 3 of those. The first one, I think, was just a week or 2 after the pandemic started. We did a Big Data Challenge as part of that. We've tried 2 more of them to figure out exactly what the format looks like. But we're actually bringing these virtual CodeDays now worldwide at the very beginning of December. So we're going to have somewhere between 5,000 to 7,000 students, I think, is our hope. From all around the world participating in this virtual CodeDay in December 2020. And we're hoping that the Big Data Challenge there will be even bigger than before, because with these in-person CodeDays, we were looking at about 3,000 students per quarter at these events. So we're expecting that now that we've figured out the format for these virtual CodeDays, huge increase there. But even so far, we've already started to see success. Okay, so just to recap here, we're really getting toward the end, and then I'm going to have time for Q&A. Traditional CS education doesn't address the motivation, so the number and diversity is not increasing. CodeDay and the Big Data Challenge are some approaches to the problem based on some of those things that I talked about, identifying crossovers, keeping things high energy, practicing just-in-time education. And these programs have convinced tens of thousands of students to pursue new careers in technology and or big data. Okay, so last slide, and then I'll get to questions. What are some ways you can get involved? If you want to get involved in CodeDay as a whole, mentors, judges, volunteers, we need all of those things. We need very, very many of them. We need hundreds of them. If you want to help with big data in particular, we need help with these big data challenges. And again, for those, we need mentors who are familiar with ECL and HPCC systems. We also need people who are familiar with big data as a whole who want to do that intro presentation. So those are all options. If you work for a company that we're not already partnered with, or if you just want to personally contribute, as I'm sure you can imagine, a nonprofit that was focused on in-person events with COVID-19, we're certainly looking for sponsors and donors, so that's always an option as well. And if you're interested in getting involved in any of these ways, you can find out more information on our website at www.codeday.org. There's a volunteer page, and there's also a contact page if you have any questions that aren't addressed or you just want to shoot us an email. If you need to get in touch with me based on anything from this presentation, I'd recommend just email that and it'll get assigned to me, or my email is just first name, last name @codeday.org. So feel free to do that as well. Lastly, I did just want to give a quick thanks to some of the folks that have made this happen from the HPCC and LexisNexis Risk Solutions teams. Monica Garrett, who's been a supporter for many, many years with CodeDay and has helped us bring this to so many cities back when we were just a small thing, just in Seattle. She and the LexisNexis Risk Solutions team have really helped us make this a worldwide phenomenon. Bahar and Arjuna for contributing their expertise, helping us put together the slides. I mean, they really did all the work there. We just provided them the feedback and the suggestions from the students, the question sets, helping us get this online. Dan, Bob, Trish, for helping get all the logistics behind the scenes to make this happen, as well as to promote it and get the opportunities for internships out to students as well. LexisNexis Risk Solutions, I believe, is working on HPCC specifically, is one of the only companies I've ever seen that has internships for high school students, which has been an amazing opportunity for a lot of our students. So that's been great as well. So with that, I have a little bit of time for questions. I think we're supposed to wrap up sometime between 50 minutes and 55 minutes past, so we have a little bit of time. But I see that there were some questions in the Q&A, so I can get to those now. So one person had asked, such an inspiring talk. What is the youngest age group that you have hosted a CodeDay event for? Typically, we don't go much younger than middle school. Basically, the skills are actually there. You'd be surprised at what younger students can do. The thing that isn't there is the sort of maturity. And so the younger we've gone, the less the maturity level is. They generally have a lot more energy and they are harder to deal with. So we tried one for an elementary school students, and it was fine if we made it shorter, but it was just really hard to do it for longer term. Middle school students, great success there, but we need to basically remove the overnight portion from some of our events. They get just as excited about big data, believe it or not, and they can contribute to big data as well, even though HCL seems like it might be a hard language to learn. Most of our events are focused on high school and college level, but again, like some of the students who are coming are middle school. So someone else had asked, what is the most unusual program a student/group has written in a CodeDay? That is tough. One of my favorites, I think, was actually from early days back in 2012. So like I said, we have themes for CodeDays. Back in 2012, we did an event whose theme was unreliable narrator. They're very open-ended themes. We had a group that made a Chrome extension that would just subtly change like dates, times, and prices on things online. So if you were, getting a calendar invite to an event that was at like, 4:30, it might change the time to 4:15 just so you'd be there slightly early. If you had a purchase that you thought you were making from Amazon for like $15, it might say it was going to be $16. Which is at least a nice surprise. So that was one of my favorites in terms of just the weird things that I've seen. We also had a student who's in some of our pictures, if you go to the website, of a guy holding a banana. This is another early days CodeDay project. Someone put an entire phone in a banana and made a banana phone. But there have been so many, and it's really hard for me as well because we do these simultaneously all around the world. And so I'm only ever able to go to one individual CodeDay, and there's so many projects that I hear about secondhand that are absolutely crazy as well. What was the biggest challenge in organizing CodeDays during the lockdown? The biggest challenge, I think, is just, it is that figuring out what the business model looks like. I think that we were lucky in that we had sort of identified these core tenets of what makes our program work early on. And because we had identified those, we were able to go into the virtual CodeDays and say, hey, how do we design a virtual event that still fits these goals? And then the other thing is our team, I come from a startup background. I think a lot of nonprofits don't have that. And not to say that that's good or bad, but for this particular situation, I have a startup background. Startups are very focused on iteration cycle, trying to do things as quickly as possible, finding product market fit. And so for us, the idea of let's do 3 virtual CodeDays in the summer, throw them together at the last minute, see what works and what doesn't, and continue to improve on that so that we can do a really good one for December. That was a super huge challenge. It was a ton of work. It was a lot of things that didn't work, some things that did, but just trying all those things was the biggest challenge. We really didn't want to just take CodeDay, put it in a live chat and say that this is good enough. And I think a lot of events nowadays have tried to do that. The ones that have really tried to focus on those new pieces of new ways of doing interaction, what does this new medium give us? Those are the ones that I think get people really excited. And that's what we've tried to do with CodeDay is try to find those new things. Last question I have, we might have time for one more if anyone else wanted to ask, but considering this as virtual, do students need to be in a specific demographic to participate or not? Students do not need to be in a specific demographic. For in-person CodeDay, students do need to be in at least middle school and not older than 25 or 21 if they're not in college. But if they're in college, we go up to 25. The reason for that is mostly security. We work with a lot of elementary, or we work with a lot of high schools. And so there's a lot of like security concerns there, and we need to make sure that we're able to address those. For the online events, that's not as much of a concern. So there's not that necessarily that age thing, but I will say that the event is heavily targeted toward younger students. If you're looking for something really serious, you're probably not going to have a great time. Like, this is really focused on the fun, weird activities. We have tons and tons of weird things planned, like just random things to keep students entertained over a weekend. So, you know, if you're not in that younger demographic, you're probably not going to enjoy it. None of our events have ever been limited to a specific demographic. You don't need to be a woman. You don't need to be, you know, Black or Latino or Native American or something like that. You don't need to be low income. Even though those are the students that tend to come to our programs and we try to recruit them, we're not an exclusive program. We're not admitting students. Everyone's welcome. It's just that we put in a lot of work to make sure that those are the students who hear about this, and that we're the type of program that is attractive to those type of students. But totally open to anyone, totally you know, welcoming to all. Cool. So I think that that is all of the questions that we had in the chat. And I know that you all, you know, wonderful viewers are going to have other things to get to. Bahar, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we end this? Oh, I actually can't hear you. I'm not sure if that's on my side or your side.
Well, can you hear me okay, Tyler?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. So anyway, I think I'm just waiting. Bahar should, as soon as I start talking. Tyler, thank you so much for the great presentation. I'm going to give you a big appreciation from the group. So you can hear that, I guess. There you go. And again, everyone head over to the plenary session for the last hour of the community day. Gosh, Tyler, thanks again. Hope to see you in person someday soon down the road. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye.